But now it's time to practice, to cultivate some forgiveness, to take this opportunity to look at how harm is caused, how we cause harm to other people, how we cause harm to ourselves, and how other people cause harm to us. So it's an investigation into how harm is caused, as well as loosening the grip of our own ill will and hatred and resentments that we hold for ourselves and hold for others, and our guilt and remorse. So we're going to practice this practice. As I said before, this is a series of meditations, and for this series of bhavanas, I would suggest just closing your eyes and letting the words and intentions flow over you, and at the same time let them sink in for future recollection and use. We can't forgive until we're ready and willing. Even then, we should take baby steps to ease ourselves into this process with kindness, friendliness, compassion, and equanimity. As I mentioned last week, Shantideva, the 8th century Indian philosopher, Buddhist monk and poet scholar, wrote in his guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, "There is nothing whatsoever that is not made easier through acquaintance. So through becoming acquainted with small harms, I should learn to patiently accept greater harms." If today you do intend to work with real instances of harm, then it's strongly recommended, as Shantideva suggests, that we practice by just bringing forward into the present moment the small hurts, the small slights, the petty betrayals, and the minor abuses, to be used as much to practice this practice as to heal those specific hurts. Try not to start with major hurts from the past. You can build up to those as we cultivate this practice. And this is a meditation template, a template for the cultivation of forgiveness. And this practice should be broken down and undertaken over a period of sessions or sittings that may last weeks or months, or in some instances, even years. And just remembering to remember this bhavana, to cultivate, to train, to incline, to sow the seed, to grow, to dwell upon, to bring it into being, to apply one's thoughts to something. And we are going to be practicing forgiveness bhavana. So as always, for heart practices, we actually imagine that we're breathing in and out through our heart center. And we take a comfortable, relaxed, upright posture. Or for these series of forgiveness bhavanas, I would strongly suggest you simply close your eyes and follow the words. Or if you're driving, please don't close your eyes. And just follow the words and get a sense for how this practice might be used in your life. So you can recite the words after me or just let them sink in. So I ask for forgiveness from others for whatever harmful things I have done, the mistakes, the failures and wrongdoings that I have intentionally or unintentionally done with my body, with my words, and with my heart. I now remember how I hurt you physically. I'm sorry. My actions were born out of my desires, out of my anger, out of my fears, out of my confusion and not knowing. But that was who I was then. It's not who I am now, and not who I will be in the future. You have nothing to fear from me today. For the thoughts, for the words, and for the acts of pain that I have inflicted upon you, I'm sorry. I forgive myself. For the physical hurt I have caused you, knowingly or unknowingly, I'm sorry. I forgive myself. For the sorrow I've caused you, I'm sorry. I forgive myself. Taking a very deep breath in and a deep breath out through the heart center. Let yourself feel your sorrow and regret for your actions. As we check in with our heart center, we might note what we find there. Note the feelings that might be there: guilt, anger, conflict, shame, hatred. But maybe you'll find surrender, compassion, or skillful remorse, and maybe even some release. Remember not to judge the content of your heart, but to discern if these feelings are kind and helpful. What would it be like to let go of the self-view of offender? What would it feel like to drop our personal stories and negative identities? Is it possible to let go of guilt and shame? The second direction of forgiveness is the harm that we caused ourselves. All of the hurt and harm that we've inflicted on ourselves through our thoughts, our words, and our spoken or unspoken, and through our actions and inactions. As we continue breathing in and out through our heart area, you might even want to place your hand on your heart. We can recite silently to ourselves, I ask for and I extend forgiveness to myself for whatever harmful things I have done, the mistakes, the failures and wrongdoings that I have intentionally or unintentionally done with my body, with my words, with my heart. I now remember how I hurt myself physically. I now remember how I hurt myself through hurting others. I now remember how I let myself down through my hurtful actions. I forgive myself. My actions were born out of my desires, out of my anger, out of my fears, out of my confusion and not knowing. But that was who I was then, not who I am now, and not who I will be in the future. I now ask for and I extend to myself a full and heartfelt forgiveness. I forgive myself for not understanding. I forgive myself for the mistakes of the past, for the thoughts, for the words, for the acts of pain. Excuse me. That I have inflicted upon myself, I offer myself forgiveness. For the physical hurt that I've caused myself, knowingly or unknowingly, I offer myself forgiveness. For the sorrow that I caused myself, I offer myself forgiveness. I wholeheartedly forgive myself. I forgive myself now. Continuing to breathe deeply in and out through the heart, let yourself feel your sorrow and regret for your actions. Again, check in with your heart center to note the feelings that might be there. Feelings of resistance or conflict, blockages, guilt, shame, anger, hatred. But maybe you'll find some surrender, some self-compassion, leading to some relief and maybe even release. Remember not to judge the content of your heart, but to discern if these feelings are kind and helpful. Remember that we are both the perpetrator and the victim of these hurts. Mindfulness means to remember what needs to be remembered, particularly remembering what is helpful, what is caring, and what is wise. what is an appropriate response? What would it feel like to drop your negative self-identities and replace them with an attitude of kindness? So we might remember the phrase used in this forgiveness practice: I forgive myself for the mistakes of the past. And may I love myself just as I am right now. The last direction of forgiveness is to forgive those who've harmed us. To forgive those who've hurt us. To forgive those who've abused us. To forgive those who've abandoned us. To forgive those who've betrayed us. So those of us who suffered the bigger wounds, the seemingly unforgivable hurts, and I would suggest that applies to almost everyone, we might simply set the intention that one day, with this practice, with this forgiveness practice, I have an aspiration that I will be able to forgive that person, forgive that event. But right now, right here, I'm not ready. So having set the intention, we can let go of the expectation of when or where or how that forgiveness may come. So we might start this stage of our forgiveness practice by just bringing forward into the present moment the small hurts, the small slights, the petty betrayals and minor abuses. As we continue to breathe in and out through the heart center, we can recite silently to ourselves, as far as I'm ready and as far as I'm able, I forgive you for whatever harmful things you have done, the mistakes, the failures and the wrongdoings that you committed intentionally or unintentionally with your body, with your words, with your heart. I now remember how you hurt me physically. I offer you my forgiveness. Your actions were born out of your desires, out of your anger, out of your fears. Your actions were born out of your confusion and your not knowing. I have carried the pain and sorrow of how you hurt me in my heart for too long. And now I put them down. Now I set you free. Now I release you. You have nothing to fear from me. For the thoughts, for the words, and for the acts of pain that you have inflicted upon me, I offer you my forgiveness. For the physical hurt that you've caused me, knowingly or unknowingly, I offer you my forgiveness. For the sorrow that you have caused me, I offer you my forgiveness. I forgive you now. Taking a deep breath in through the heart, long slow breath out through the heart. Let yourself feel your pain and sorrow. Check in with your heart center to note the feelings that are there. The resistance, the conflicts, the blockages, perhaps renewed anger, renewed hatred. It is possible that we may even feel guilt or shame because of someone else's actions. In which case, we must remember that this deserves kindness and self-forgiveness. And remember, we're not judging the content of our heart, but we're trying to discern if these feelings are kind and helpful. Is it possible to let go of the identity of being a victim of these hurts? What purpose does such a self-view serve? Does this self-view still help, or does it now hinder? Remember, we can forgive, but we do not have to forget. Forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. We're not inviting people back into our lives. Forgiveness and justice can and should be applied together. Forgiveness is a process, not a single event. And sometimes this is a very gradual process that requires patience and courage. A gradual process that cannot be rushed or faked. When we let go of blame, shame, guilt, anger, etc., we move away from clinging towards letting go. We move away from aversion towards love. We move away from confusion towards wisdom. We move away from avoidable suffering towards the end of avoidable suffering. We take another step closer to finding that perfect, unshakable liberation of the heart. Freedom from greed, freedom from hatred, and freedom from delusion. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your practice. Thank you for your patience. If one of the definitions, if one of the Pali definitions for forgiveness includes patience and endurance, you've been very kind. You're getting a lot of practice at it. So thanks everyone for being here.